gentlemen, it is the Pilo Waves Podcast, and my name is Alex Vidalis. Every episode of the Pilo Waves Podcast, we attempt to bring to you a story of a fellow DMV resident, or if you're not from the DMV, a fellow citizen of the planet Earth. So, the episodes generally focus on, bringing stories of these people's lives, their creative lives, their lives outside of their creative lives, because we believe that bringing you these stories will further embed us with each other's success. You will be more likely to go enjoy their art, go see their performance, go see their installation, go see them perform live in front of an audience. We want you to be part of that audience. On today's episode, in the hopes that you will go see these bands, you're going to hear in this order the band Addieville, you're going to hear Drugs of Faith, and you're going to hear the Grand Candy. We bring you this music because we want you to go see them live and in person. As I was mentioning, or have mentioned many times, we love stories about artistry, technology, community, commerce, and today's story resonates in all those worlds. It's illustrator Ben Claassen, painter Ben Claassen, cartoonist Ben Claassen, all those things. And he's written stuff about the Washington City paper and the Baltimore City paper and how they've had to lay people off. He's drawn things about it. He's drawn things about the death of the creative idea, which is a great one you need to definitely check out. And he also spends time at a summer camp teaching kids how to program creative things on the internet. And so on today's Pilo Waves podcast, here's Ben Claassen. How many different papers do you run? Are you syndicated in?
I'm only in DC and Baltimore now.
Okay.
At one point, I was in 8 different papers a while ago, but things have changed.
Do those papers no longer exist?
Some of them no longer exist. Some of them don't have a budget anymore. It's especially for comics. Comics were like the first thing to go from a lot of them.
I really miss the one in City Paper that used to be the pictures of Star Trek: The Next Generation action figures. Do you remember that one?
No, that must have been a while.
It was a little bit wild.
Ago.
Yeah. I think I dated myself. So the reason I had you on the show, though, was that there was a particular comic that you had put together that I think spoke a little bit of what we're talking about right this second, which is the death of certain kinds of media. And do you remember the comic in particular that I'm talking about? The one on the ship celebrating as it sort of went down?
The one with the sinking ship.
Can you tell us, as much as you're comfortable with, tell us the story of that one?
The Baltimore City paper was recently bought, and they laid off a lot of their long-term employees, people that worked there for 20, 25 years, people that I worked with. And I didn't know for sure whether they were going to cut the comic entirely from the print. So a long time ago when I used to work for the DC City paper as a production artist, and they were also restructuring at a point, and everybody thought they were going to lose their jobs. So I drew in a sketchbook, I had this comic where a ship was sinking and everybody was kind of doing their own thing on it. So the original idea came from there, and then I just kind of applied it to the Baltimore City paper thing.
So the slow death of an idea. I didn't introduce her at the beginning of the show, but Becca Steinhoff is joining us.
Hello.
Sitting back, chilling.
And
I sent her the comic. I think the one I actually sent you was the slow death of the idea. And I said, hey, do you want to interview Ben Claassen on the show? And she wrote back and she was like, this is right up my alley. Can you take us through how your life still mirrors the slow death of the idea and where you've maybe pulled apart from that?
Well, Slow Death, the idea comic is about kind of the creative process that happens every week with the comic. And it never has changed, even over 10 years. Sometimes it's really bad. Sometimes it works out perfectly. But most weeks it's really bad, where I just pull my hair out for several hours and have lots of self-doubt and overthink things and have a good joke and then turn it into a terrible joke over the time of making the comic.
Sure.
Or just don't have any ideas and just am working with nothing and trying to pull it out of my ass. Like that happens.
Becca Steinhoff, do you have something to say about that?
I love it so much because even though there's the slow death of an idea and the whole concept of the comic is that ideas are difficult to capture, the whole comic captures that. So even though you're struggling and you have self-doubt, your idea gets worse or whatever, how you feel about it, what stems from it is still a creation, and it's a really vibrant one.
Thank you.
So it's like, what do you, like, you have to suffer or you don't get this, you know? Like the whole thing, the whole comic, the idea behind the comic, it's like a cycle that every creative person can attest to.
It's brutal, you know.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking, and
it really is. And
the fact that you're even able to accomplish a comic with it makes me angry. Like, damn it.
I think, and also for me, the panel that really I think hits it completely on the nail on the head is the death of the idea starts immediately. It's the very next panel. It's
Right.
I have this great idea, and then it suddenly isn't a great idea as soon as you say it out loud.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. The first panel is like, oh, it's great, and then everything after that, it's like, no, it's dead, it's dead, it's dying. Oh, it might be alive. No, it's totally dead.
It just gets worse and
It
worse.
just gets worse.
Now, do you remember how long ago you wrote that one?
No.
Do you?
It's in a notebook somewhere. I saved that one. There's a lot of ideas that I'll have that I think are better than the time that I have for the week, or I just don't have the brain for it. Because a lot of times I'll be too tired to do something, or I just, a bigger idea will take more than I have to put into it. So sometimes I save them for a few months. And that was definitely one that I saved because I wanted to do it right.
So it sounds like, and tell me if I'm wrong, I don't want to put words in your mouth, because you talk a little bit about how you save things and you have some sketches that you've gone back to after a certain amount of time. Do you find that like the pace that you sort of set for yourself in terms of like deadlines, is that self-imposed to create sort of an excitement around the creation? Or is that something that you just do naturally because you're, I was going to say a lazy person, but that's not it. You're not a lazy person. Someone's nodding their head, but that's not, it's no one in the room right now.
Yeah, the deadline, I couldn't do anything without the deadline, which is a lot of the problem with the changing of the media. Like the Facebook thing doesn't really have a deadline, but the print always has the weekly deadline.
Sure.
And I've always done them the night before they were due because of like what we were just talking about with that comic, and that I'll overthink it into the morning. And at a certain point, I just have to send it. It has to get done and it has to go, even if it's terrible or if I hate it. And sometimes I'll like it later, but yeah, the
Do you want to rethink that answer? Because I think
Yes.
someone disagreed with that. You eventually find it funnier later. Is that true?
sometimes I'll hate something when I send it, and then several months later I'll look back at it and think that it wasn't as bad as I thought it was. But in terms of the deadline, I couldn't do it without that. Like, that's definitely what drives it to get done.
I think my favorite part about being creative is that I was saying this to you earlier, that unless I'm actually forced to do something, I'm going to do nothing and I'm going to have a great time doing it.
Right.
Like that freedom is pretty dangerous for the most part. You have to have something that's like closing in on you. You have to be forced to get up and do something, or else, you know, your brain is just running free and wild and it's awesome, but you don't get anything done.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
How important? And you actually make, if you don't mind talking a little bit about it, you actually make money in a couple different ways. You have a multitude of jobs, several jobs.
I do freelance work. I do freelance design work. I also do the illustrations for the Express every week. There's 2 columns that I illustrate. And I work for the Express on Thursdays, where I just send pages to a printer and have like an excuse to come to DC and go into an office. Over the summer, I teach summer camp, like a computer camp for kids.
Oh, cool.
And I sell paintings at the Galaxy Hut mostly.
Talk a little bit about the camp.
Oh, the camp I've been doing since 2000. And I think I'm going to retire from it this summer, but I've done it every summer since 2000. And it's a bunch of rich kids come to a computer camp. It's usually out of Stanford or UC Berkeley, and I've done it in LA a couple times. But it's like a circus act.
Okay.
Like, we show up and set up computers, kids come, and I teach them web design and animation for a week. It's pretty wild.
Do you find that it's is it fruitful for you in any other way? Does it make you feel? I mean, is it helpful? Because when you say rich kids, it does make me kind of snicker a little bit. I'm like, really? Because they need so much help learning how to program.
No, they do. I don't think the rich part of it matters too much, because like all the kids have the curiosity. There's like, I like to teach middle school kids the
Mhm.
most because they haven't really figured out what's cool yet. They haven't broken up into groups. They're kind of, it's like the last point where they're a gang.
Before the click starts.
Yeah. And I like that. I think it was a good time period. And in terms of teaching them, like they're still excited about things, which is fun. Like it's fun to be around anyone who's excited about anything.
Sure.
So I like that about it. And then also I get to see what they're into every year, which has changed a lot. At one point I realized that the kids I was teaching were like younger than the Simpsons,
Mm-hmm.
which was like, that was a weird day.
That is strange.
But you can see like kind of what the trends are with young people and what they're buying and like what video games they're into, and it's a lot of stuff that I've never even heard of.
Are there any constant threads though that you see in the kids? Like no matter what they're into, like middle school kids are always this.
I got one real good look at you, and then I spent a long time missing you. I get by. I hear one loud shutter snap, and then I turn around 'cause I need a nap. But the sleep won't do me any good 'cause it's too noisy in the neighborhood. I get by. I get by. I get by. I get by. Down inside my diving bell, I assume the weather is swell. All the charts and maps of spots on the sun. I never saw you coming, even though I was warned. I get by. I get by. I get by. I get by. And you were mine for the shortest time, and then I watched you cross the horizon line, and you took all I would ever be with you. And I probably won't live to ever see you come back this way again, my friend, my friend, my friend. And I know, you know, and you know I know, you know. And I know, you know, and you know I know, you know. Now I've traced your glittery path, and I've broken it all down to the math. And 75 long years from now, 76 years maybe, all of that distance and all that it's worth to be the night light for this hollow earth. And I wanna be there to see you shine, but it's okay, everything's fine. I'll get by. I'll get by. I'll get by. I'll get by. I'll get by.
Arlington and Alexandria. That was Arlington and Alexandria's own Addyville. Shout out to my pals Robert and Diana on that track. That was Race Car. So you've been listening to this interview with Ben Claassen. He's a fascinating guy. He was definitely cool. And as I'm always apologizing on this podcast, I have to apologize because it was a great interview, despite what Ben and I actually thought. Because there was Ben was exhausted. He was totally just zonked out, and he talked about it a little bit about how he just he sort of like pushes himself to these great lengths to get a creative idea from himself, which I thought was really cool. And then what you're also going to hear in the next segment is him talking about specifically the awkwardness that middle schoolers still exhibit no matter where they're from. You're going to hear him talk about what he gets paid $10 a week to do, which is ridiculous. And you're also going to hear him talk about, which this hit a little bit too close to home, but that's fine, people in their mid to late 30s who are trying to keep their edge. So let's get on with a little bit more of the Pile of Ways podcast interview with Ben Claassen.
Middle school kids are always awkward. There was one week where I taught kids from country.
From a country?
From Korea, South Korea. These kids had won a contest through Samsung, and their prize was to spend a week with me in computer camp. So they flew over.
Was it billed that way too? Is like Ben Classen's of Dirt Farm?
No, I don't mention the comic. I try to get them to not look at my website or anything.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, they're a little too young for that.
Sure.
But
you don't want them to be that jaded yet.
Yeah, I figure that they find it anyway. Maybe. I hope not, but I'm sure that a few of them have seen it anyway. But the kids from South Korea came over, and they all won a contest. So they were like super geniuses. It was crazy. They were like little robots. They could read 5 websites at a time. They would just scan them in different languages and convert it back and forth. And it was kind of crazy to teach them just because they were so advanced at a very young age. But they still had the awkward middle school thing going on. Like they still locked themselves out of their rooms. Like, they still like missed home or whatever.
Yeah.
So it was kind of neat.
That is that. So when you're, do you have any kids? I'm sorry, a good interviewer would have done that beforehand.
Sam has 2 kids.
Mm-hmm.
So summer camp has been a very good primer for hanging out with kids.
Sure.
I don't know. I think she would have more to say about that. But
do you ever find yourself? I'm sorry. Go ahead. No, please.
That's part of I think camp and the kids that I share that I share now is that they provide like an endless supply of hilarity for like the comic, where it's like, or at least like fodder to stimulate your brain. Right? Like, wow,
that actually makes me think too. Becca, did you read the article? Have you run into those 14-year-old comedians that are running around?
I know them both.
Okay, how are they? How does that?
Well, they're great. They're good. Unfortunately, they're experiencing some negative backlash from that article.
Oh.
I was talking to one of them at the Arlington Draft House, because the article bills them as, well, they've performed at the Draft House and at the Comedy Spot, and then the Draft House kind of came out and goes, wait, we have a 14-year-old roaming around? That's not okay, and now he can't perform there anymore. So that article, though it's press that I would give a pinky for, it's kind of affecting them negatively in that way.
Sure.
They're not going to be able to go back to that venue until they're 21.
With all the love in your heart, and as I know you know them, would you say that they're awkward middle schooly kids sometimes?
Oh, totally. Yeah. I mean, they're 14-year-olds, and they're also new comics, so I really should hate them. There's really no reason for me to like them. But I appreciate that they're like really into it, and I'm really jealous of their press. And yeah, it's a pretty interesting concept. But totally, they are really, I mean, they're awkward, and their jokes are awkward, and their jokes are about them being 14. And as a comic, I'm just like, I mean, as comics, we really hate to see, an Asian comic just talking about being Asian, or a black comic just talking about the difference between black people and white people is that black people are black, and women talking about vaginas and periods and stuff. As comics, we're always like,
God,
Well,
you're always talking about your period. Always, constantly. Anytime Becca's on the
At
show.
least once a month. Sometimes twice a month.
Unless you're on one of
yeah.
those crazy Nouveau rings,
Yeah.
then you only have
Did
a period.
you say the nouveau ring?
Mhm, the Nouveau ring.
It's a nouveau ring.
It's Nouveau.
A nouveau ring.
Sure, I shouldn't say
A
Nouveau.
nouveau ring sounds like an art installation
I wish.
or a new planet.
Are you saying that this is maybe mine's the off-brand
Yeah.
Nouveau?
The nouveau ring. Yeah. It really, we don't want to hear that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you have to write about what you are, but we always strive for, like, I want to write a joke about my car that works. That hadn't happened yet, but like, I've written a ton of them. They never work. I just mean that, you know, I want to hear you talk about something worldly, something otherly than yourself. That's not saying that I do that, but like when a 14-year-old gets on stage, you go, oh, they're going to talk about how they're 14 and awkward. And of course that's what they do.
Sometimes I find that it's just a staggering reminder of how little I've actually progressed since 14. When
Yeah,
they're like talking
you
about
relate.
something. Yeah, I'm like, oh shit, that happens to me all the time. Is
Yeah.
that not supposed to happen to us anymore?
The main thing that I say to both of them when I see them is that how lucky they are to have discovered their passion early on. Because I'm 25, I've been doing it for 5 years, but you know, they're 14. By the time they're my age, they're going to be great. They're already going to have 10, 15 years. So like the younger you start, the better. So it's great. But I asked one of them, so would you say that your schoolwork is suffering a little bit? And he's sitting there with his mother, and I was like, so what do you think? Do you think your schoolwork's still number one priority? And he was like, totally. And she looked at me and was like, no, it's not. Like, it's suffering for it. And I was like, well, that's cool, because being a comic, you really don't need education.
In fact, it may even benefit you.
Yeah. So
It's only the screensaver, but thank you for pointing it out.
I thought maybe it died.
No, just the
Okay.
screensaver. But speaking of audience and writing about what you know, and so Ben, when you put up the last week's Dirt Farm, I sent you a text and said, I really like this. It's really good. Dirt Farm. Would you stop looking at my life? Because it was the comic that's about like when the older person is still trying to show that they have an edge, and so you said, oh, I'm glad you liked it, and it was really polite. But can you talk a little bit about like when you make a comic that, and maybe you're not aware, but you know that some of those speak very directly to certain groups of people. Do you think about that at all? Are you actually writing it with that in mind, or are you just so sleep deprived that you're just trying to get something out the door?
With that one, it was kind of the comic is the how to stay edgy when you're past your prime. Part of it was also about the all weekly thing. I was continuing that theme. I didn't know if I was gonna get canceled, and then they were bought out by the new company. So it was kind of a comment on that, just how to stay edgy, how to stay alternative newspaper once you've been bought out by a bigger entity. But it was also commenting on middle-aged douchebags that are trying to stay cool, stay young,
Sure.
stay part of the young crowd.
No, I'm living it. I know. It's very sad. It's very sad.
It's not sad, it's funny.
Do you feel like your art has changed over time, between the time when it wasn't really something that you were getting paid to do, and now it's something that supports you?
The art doesn't support me, so
No.
yeah, that hasn't really changed.
But it's requested. It's something that people want from you and sort of require of you.
Yeah, I don't think of it like that though. I don't think of it in terms of like what people want out of it. It's just something that I do. Like I'm gonna do it anyway, so I try to capture the best of it and put it out there.
But you don't think it's changed your work at all?
Not really. Like not in terms of like I don't really think about an audience so much. Maybe I should, but I don't know. I try not to. It's hard to do it at all when you're picturing who's gonna read it. Because
That's fascinating. Because so
Do you think it would change? Like if it all of a sudden became the thing that you had to do to support yourself, do you think it would bastardize your content in your mind?
I'm afraid of that. So probably. I mean, when I first started, I was because I drew comics when I was in high school and whatever, and I was worried that my parents would find them. So it was kind of that whole thing where it's like, ooh, I don't know if I should be drawing
Some
this.
people are afraid their parents are going to find their porn.
Yeah.
They might find these comics I've been drawing.
Sometimes it's both too.
Yeah.
I mean, they're porn
comics.
comics that you draw yourself.
Yeah, but the audience is kind of the same way. Like, I just don't like to think about it. Like, I don't like to think about, like, even people that I've met at conventions reading certain comics. It's just, I try to distance myself from the audience as best I can. And as far as the money goes, like, it really doesn't pay much at all. Like, the comic now pays $10 a week, like, in the one paper.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned it in one of your comics recently.
Yeah.
The Fappy had made it.
It might cost more than $10 to produce it.
Yeah, it's $10 in pencils.
Yeah.
So why do you do it? Why? I mean, I know there's not just one reason, but just tell me a couple. Why do you do it if it does nothing, for connecting to an audience and it doesn't pay well? Then why do you do it? There was Drugs of Faith with Farewell Kiss. Drugs of Faith member Richard Johnson, who plays in Agoraphobic Nosebleed. Actually, the Agoraphobic Nosebleed, I don't know if it's the first time ever that they'll be playing live, but they certainly has been a huge amount of time since I think that they performed live. I'm fairly certain it's the first time ever. They're going to be playing Maryland Death Fest 2015, which is very fucking exciting. On today's episode, you've been listening to an interview with Ben Claassen, and in the upcoming segment, in the final segment, interview portion of the show, and I should have said it at the beginning, but I didn't. Becca Steinhoff joined me in my interview with Ben because she enjoyed his work that I had sent to her, and I think she's always fun. She's always has interesting commentary and insight, and I hope when she listens to this. Firstly, I hope she listens to this, and second, when I hope she listens to this, I hope she's reminded of just what an interesting talk show sort of format personality. That's something that I've talked to her about before. I think she's just naturally good at that. Also, in this segment, you're going to hear about sort of Ben's opinion or lack of opinion on the importance of his work and sort of the grander scheme of things that I sort of propose. I'm just it's one of those things where I sort of propose a sort of a larger idea, and someone just kind of like meh. Which, as someone with, my kind of personality type, that's, I would say that's probably par for the course. You're also going to hear Ben talk about his public persona and the sort of outward, sort of personality that he has to display from time to time, to deal with the fame that he actually has, and he has achieved the level of fame and success, which he enjoys, and then he both enjoys, and sometimes it causes him some aggravation. So here's the last segment of our interview on the Pathways podcast with Ben Claassen.
It does connect to the audience. I just don't think about the audience while I'm making it. Like, if it didn't connect to the audience, I'd find it hard to do it.
I misspoke. I didn't mean, you're not doing it to connect with the audience. You're not doing it with the purpose in mind of I'm doing this in order for my public to then reach out to me and say hey, I love that comic.
Well, I am in a way.
Okay, right on.
But
I
you would
mean,
create it either way.
Yes.
So it might as well be seen by the greatest number of people. But even if
Yes.
nobody was paying attention to it, it would still be done.
We would still be in the crazy notebooks.
What's the most amount of fandom that you've had to deal with? Like, have you ever been overwhelmed by a group of people coming up and saying like, "Oh, we have to talk to you. We love your comic, or we love the writing you've done," or
That happens probably at Crafty Bastards the most.
sure.
But I'm into that. It's just a different mode. I have to turn on like public persona mode
Ugh.
somewhat. Like, it's not natural.
Sam, what's the public persona mode like?
It is like drunk and tired
It's not
combined.
drunk and tired. It's more like, I'm an actor. This is what I do. Hello,
Not-
fan. Oh, I like that too. You know, and it's like they sort of have these really strange interactions. And when people walk up, like
I
we
don't-
worked Crafty Bastards this past fall, it's like people get all starry-eyed, and they're like, "Is Ben here?" And it's like, "No, he'll be right back."
I
They
know.
like totally
I know.
deflate. When is he coming back?
You wouldn't.
They don't want to talk to anyone
And
else.
it's funny because like so in the interview today, right? You're tired, and I know that. But you wouldn't think that there's a part of you that really looks forward to that and enjoys it. But I feel like I'm hearing that there is a part of you that enjoys it very much. So much so that you've made a
love it.
persona
I
to
love
be
it.
in it.
And not everybody's like that. Like really most people come up and it's just a normal conversation.
Sure.
And a lot of people will come up to different shows and I'll remember them from previous shows and we'll continue a conversation that we had like a year ago. It's totally cool. But every now and then the persona has to be turned on for certain people.
Do you require complete like silence and privacy when creating? Like what if a fan of yours wanted to watch the process in person? Would that stifle you?
I don't know.
What if I already sold like 20 tickets and they were outside right now?
$10 a pop.
Depends on if it's one of the bad weeks we're talking about.
But they want to see the good or the bad. Like it's a process.
I don't think anybody wants to see a bad week.
That seems like the one they want to see the most,
I would
right?
want to see
Yeah.
the bad.
Yeah, I want to see the bad week.
I find it so interesting because for you, the audience is something that you encounter occasionally, whereas it's something that I wouldn't say I require it, but like as a comic, without a crowd, without an audience, we have nothing. Like the creative process happens alone for sure, but we need that audience interaction every 10 to 15 seconds or else we think we're not doing something correctly.
Right. And it's not a passive engagement.
No,
at any level.
No, it's one of those mediums where you get your feedback immediately and you know immediately what is going to happen to you. And you might even find that one crowd likes a joke whereas another crowd wouldn't. But like with comics or with creativity in, a private setting or a published setting, like it's just kind of a fringe thing that happens after the work is done.
Yeah, you get to hide a lot.
Yeah, which
easier.
sounds so lovely. It sounds nice.
Well, and to nerd it up about the medium again for a second, the idea that when you were talking about how you would make a comic and then come back to it and maybe like it more, when Becca has a performance and puts it out there, then that's, aside from someone like actually taping it, that performance lives and it kind of like
Lives and dies there.
just lives and dies there, and the memory fades or it stays clear, and
Yeah.
it's like a whole different way. And so like sweating it afterwards is different for her than sweating it afterwards for you. Tell us a little bit about where the highs and the lows are for you specifically, though, in your art. Like, where do you what actually makes you happy? Not satisfied that you made it to the deadline and you got something done, but where you actually let yourself feel happiness, joyfulness.
The best thing that can happen with a comic is where I have like a moment that just cracks me up. Like it could be anything, but I'll try and capture that as best I can. And if I can manage to do it, if it was as close to the original thing that cracked me up, if I can get that out in a format that translates it to another person, that's definitely the best thing that I can do with it. And it sometimes works. Sometimes I'll see people read them, like if I display them in a show or something, and they'll have like this gut laugh that happens immediately. That's exactly the same as the one that I had when
Sure.
I first thought of something.
We're all addicted to that laugh
Yeah.
in one way or another.
Sure.
Yeah, I wanted to comment also on.
Sorry, I
something
interrupted you.
She said earlier about getting to tailor a joke. Some of the comics that bomb, or I think they bomb, I'll hear from people later. I'll ask them like what their favorite comic was. They'll say that they like the comic, and I'll say, "Oh, are there any that you remember?" And they almost always bring up one that I either felt weird about or I thought were awful, and it's just like weird. Why do they like that one?
Yeah.
So,
Well, it's not for you to judge the work. It's for you to
Yeah,
create it and put it out there.
exactly.
And the judgment that comes back might be contradictory to what you expected, but it doesn't surprise me at all to hear that.
yeah, and same with the crowd. It's not like you can ask everybody.
You can try.
What about the lows? Like where does being an artist really just suck?
Oh, man.
I mean, where are you not into it?
The lows, there's so many. There's the doing something for 10 years and it could go away at any point, and
Right.
there's no monetary backing of it, and there's not really a support for any of it.
Is it important? Is cartooning and illustrating and the things that you do, is your art important?
Is it important?
Right.
I don't think so. I mean, it's important. It's important to me. It's important to the people that like it. But is it important in the grand scheme of the world, the universe surviving? I have no idea.
I think you'd be surprised that you'd get a different answer, because I mean, I would definitely answer that it is, and yours specifically. I mean, it's hard for me to give it the gravity of, yes, it is on the scale of importance. But if you talk about art in general and cartooning and things that poke fun at societal norms and standards that we found, that is exceedingly important, like so large that we can't even discuss it in a podcast of this manner. And so for that reason, like, I would say, don't worry about it. That's like the least of the issues that we've ever had happen on this show, up to and including me not recording whole interviews. So, oh yeah. So, but this one is recording, I think. So, but I think it's vastly important. And one of the reasons that I know it's important is because I think some of the things that it used to really serve the most amount of good towards are disappearing. And that's like things like media and newspapers. Newspapers actually served a purpose, whether or not people would agree with me. And I don't care if anyone wouldn't, because I'm right. There really is a difference in the way that you get your news, the manner in which you get your news. The newspaper was a different way to consume news and issues than, say, an internet website thing is, what I guess the internet, whatever you would call it. And that's what I would say. Do you think work is important in that way? Do you consider yourself in that echelon?
Definitely think that work is important in that way. Whether my work is important remains to be seen.
No, it keeps me from acting like a total douchebag. So for that, I thank you. I'm like, oh shit, that's stupid. Oh, I didn't know. Oh God. Ben, I really appreciate you coming out here all the way from Baltimore, man.
Thank you.
Long way to your house in the winter time. When the frost hits, you never know what you'll find along the road anyway. Even on the most sunshiny day, weather is only a matter of mind in the winter time. It's a long way to your house in the winter time. In the snowdrift, the stick shift, that starts to slide along the road anyway. Even on this most sunshiny day, a trip to your place, a perilous drive. The winter time. And the frost comes over me like a lesson that's never so friendly to my jaw, that I never saw coming. And I wait through the winter and pray for the thaw.
to your house in the wintertime. Staying stuck in gear, steady, slow, 25. Feel the wheels start to go. What the hell did I know? Yeah. Trip to your place is a perilous drive. Weather is only a matter of mind. To think I thought you were a friend of mine. Not this winter time. Oh, it's the winter time.
That was the Grand Candy with Wintertime. I wanted to send out a special thanks to Dan Cohn, a member of the Grand Candy, for giving me some feedback on the show. And that was, I should be saying the names of the artists and the music that I play, which I reluctantly agreed to. But now that I hear it on the show, it definitely sounds better. And then it actually tells you who it is. And that way you don't have to actually just look at the description of the show. But, ever forward. On today's show, I wanted to thank Ben Claassen for joining us. I wanted to thank Becca Steinhoff for joining us, being a great guest or co-host, as she's always a lovely light that adds her own brand of humor and observations, and I wanted to send a special thanks to her. I love in that last part of that interview when I mentioned something about like an internet website thingy, I think is the way I put it. I'm such a great journalist. Anyway, as always, go out and support your local artists. Go out and support your local musicians. We ask that you do that. We ask that you engage with us in person. If you see us at a show, make sure you say, hi, my name is Alex Vidalis. No, you don't say, hi, your name is Alex Vidalis. My name is Alex Vidalis. You say, hi. And I would say, hey, my name is Alex Vidalis. I guess what I was trying to say is, you say hi, and then I was reminding you that my name was Alex Vidalis. If you're listening to this at this point, God bless you. And for that, I would ask you to do a little bit more. Make sure you're sending this show out to your friends and say, check it out. I think it's important. Or if you don't think it's important enough and you could give us some feedback on what we could do to make it more important, you can send us an email, culture@pilotwaves.com. You can also tweet us @pilotwaves. That's it for now. And please join us for the next episode. I don't know which one we're going to release next, but I bet it's going to be a good one. Thanks for listening.